Not so long ago, the United Kingdom bid farewell to the era of Queen Elizabeth II, as her son, King Charles III, ascended to the throne. However, this fresh chapter in the monarchy's history began far from triumphant applause. The new king, in whom great expectations were placed, faced a torrent of criticism and disapproval from his subjects. For some Britons, accustomed to the majestic figure of the late queen, accepting Charles as a credible leader has been a slow process. What exactly is behind this ambivalence toward the reigning monarch, and why does his rule prompt so many questions? A king with too soft a heart? Charles, now King Charles III, is well known for his refined nature and passion for art, architecture, and environmentalism. Yet, instead of admiration, his sensitivity has become one of the primary sources of discontent among Britons. To many, an ideal representative of the monarchy is a strong and resolute figure, someone capable of showing toughness and resilience in challenging times. Charles, with his cultivated worldview, doesn't match the image of what people have historically expected from a monarch. Even within the royal family, his mild nature has been frequently noted. Journalist Petronella Wyatt once recalled how Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, described Charles as too sensitive, spoiled, and in constant need of attention. From a young age, he was surrounded by aides and mentors tasked with bolstering his confidence and guiding his actions. Such nurturing has led to doubts about whether he can wield not only power but also the unifying influence required to lead a nation. Many Britons argue that emotional vulnerability and sensitivity are ill-suited to the role of a king, someone meant to symbolize stability and decisiveness. Charles often speaks about caring for the world and the environment, but critics dismiss these as merely the lost dreams of a monarch who, they claim, prioritizes lofty ideals over practical leadership. Is such a gentle soul truly fitted to be the leader of a nation? The answer remains unclear. Family scandals, more is expected from the father of the nation. The reign of King Charles III has begun under less than ideal circumstances for the royal family. In recent years, the British public has witnessed numerous family scandals, many of which prominently involve Charles. From strained relationships with his sons, William and Harry, to his apparent inability to manage the public fallout caused by Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's revelations, these issues have cast a shadow over the new monarch's image. Prince Harry has frequently spoken about his complicated relationship with his father, accusing Charles of a lack of care and of cutting him off financially. According to Harry, in moments when he most needed the support of his family, the king essentially left him to deal with his struggles alone. If the new king cannot be considered an exemplary father to his own family, how can he serve as a true father of the nation? One incident, in particular, remains etched in the minds of Charles's critics. As a young Prince William suffered a head injury and was rushed to the hospital, Princess Diana immediately hurried to her son's side. Charles, on the other hand, chose to attend a pre-scheduled official event instead. For many Britons, this moment has come to symbolize Charles's self-centered approach to his family. Reports suggest that his interactions with his children were often marked by emotional distance and a lack of genuine closeness. This has led many to ask, if Charles maintains such detachment from his own family, how will he foster a meaningful connection with the people of his nation? Ruler or stubborn autocrat? Charles's authoritarian tendencies. Even before he assumed the crown, Charles had earned a reputation as a man who primarily listens to his own counsel. The new king, undeniably a champion of progressive ideas, including environmental protection and the preservation of historical sites, has been accused by critics of dismissing opposing viewpoints, even when they come from highly qualified advisors. King Charles III is renowned for his steadfast principles, which, on one hand, mark him as a man of conviction, but on the other, make him appear inflexible and resistant to compromise. This characteristic has raised concerns about his approach to leading the nation in an era of political uncertainty, economic hardship, and growing tensions with Scotland. Skeptical subjects argue that a monarch must adapt to the demands of the times, rather than remain bound by personal ideals. Why the public favors William for the throne? Amid the dissatisfaction surrounding Charles, conversations about Prince William as a potential king have grown louder. For many Britons, the image of this devoted family man embodies exactly what the monarchy needs now. Even in appearance, King Charles III is often viewed as a relic of a bygone era, whereas Prince William and his wife, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, represent a new generation. The young couple seems to symbolize a modernized monarchy capable of balancing tradition with contemporary societal values. The Prince and Princess of Wales are admired for their authenticity, their active engagement in charitable initiatives, and their willingness to address key social issues such as mental health, environmentalism, and the importance of family. Britons appreciate their approach to public work and their relatability, qualities that many feel Charles lacks. Unlike his father, William is seen as composed and confident. He resonates with the younger generation while maintaining the dignity and grace that characterized his late grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II. This is why so many hope that the crown will eventually bypass Charles, passing instead to his eldest son. Can King Charles III win over the people's hearts? King Charles III may now occupy the British throne, but his journey to earning the public's trust resembles a winding and uncertain road. The new monarch's personality and leadership have deeply divided public opinion. Some praise his genuine concern for environmental and cultural preservation, while others criticize his stubbornness, perceived emotional fragility, and questionable decisions. One of Charles's greatest challenges will be to prove that he is more than a mere custodian of the crown, that he can lead the country forward despite the wave of skepticism. For now, public sentiment toward the new king remains mixed. However, it is clear that his reign marks the beginning of a new era for Britain, one that will come with challenges, opportunities, and hopes for a monarchy that can adapt to the ever-changing times. The question remains, can Charles III meet the expectations and win over the hearts of his critics? Only time and his actions as king will provide the answer. King Charles III cannot escape his past, how his reputation remains burdened by mistakes and family scandals. The reign of King Charles III marks a new chapter in the history of the British monarchy, yet his reputation continues to be marred by the shadows of his past. Having inherited the crown from his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, Charles has also inherited the scrutiny of a watchful public, people who evaluate him not only by his current actions but also through the lens of the scandals and controversies that have punctuated his personal life. From his tumultuous relationship with Princess Diana and family conflicts to accusations of a capricious temperament and doubts cast by those closest to him, these lingering issues prompt many Britons to approach Charles with skepticism. The shadow of Princess Diana, wounds that won't heal. One of the most painful and frequently revisited aspects of Charles's past is his relationship with Princess Diana. The beloved Queen of Hearts remains an enduring symbol of love and compassion for the public, even years after her tragic death. In stark contrast, Charles is still associated with the anguish she endured during their turbulent marriage. The people of Britain remember not only Diana's sorrowful fate but also the perceived detachment of her husband, his extramarital affair, and their infamous divorce, a public rift that symbolized the deep disconnect between the royal family and the public's affection. Charles's admission that he maintained a romantic relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles while still married to Diana was a profound blow to millions. It sparked a wave of criticism that continues to echo decades later. For many, Camilla is still viewed as the other woman, and their current marriage is seen as a poignant reminder that Charles didn't always prioritize his royal duties over personal desires. But the controversy wasn't limited to his relationship with Camilla. Numerous accounts of Charles's aloofness toward Diana further tarnished his image. Stories of his apparent disregard for her feelings raised difficult questions. If he couldn't provide support for his wife, how could he be expected to support an entire nation? In stark contrast, Diana's sincerity, warmth, and willingness to connect with ordinary people created a profoundly different image. Her rejection of traditional protocols, innate charisma, and accessibility made her a beacon of humanity within the monarchy. Even now, as king, Charles finds himself inevitably compared to her, a comparison that continues to damage his reputation. A king prone to losing his temper. Not all of Charles's critics see him as a steady and composed leader. On the contrary, many perceive him as temperamental and prone to fits of frustration. Instances of the king losing his cool in public or making questionable decisions have repeatedly become fodder for the press. One notable example came during the early days of his reign. In a widely reported incident, Charles expressed visible irritation over a leaking ink pen, a moment that was both mocked in memes and lampooned in the media. While the episode may have provided light entertainment for some, it also prompted others to seriously question whether someone so easily agitated by minor inconveniences could be equipped to handle the weightier responsibilities of state. These moments invite concerns about Charles's ability to approach governance with the calmness and resilience required during challenging times. Monarchs are expected to embody unshakable steadiness, but Charles's public displays of frustration seem to highlight his vulnerability and impulsiveness, qualities seemingly at odds with the traditional image of a king. Critics and biographers, the public trust still eludes him. King Charles III faces criticism not only from the public but also from those who have spent years studying his life and behavior. Biographer Tom Bower, in his book Rebel Prince, characterized Charles as stubborn, moody, and at times indifferent to the consequences of his actions. Some biographers have noted that Charles, even as king, appears to prioritize personal interests over those of the nation. He has frequently been accused of meddling in matters outside the purview of a neutral monarch. His past opinions and interventions raise questions about his willingness to set aside personal preferences in favor of the broader good. The crown demands restraint and political tact from its wearer. However, Charles's perceived impulsiveness paints him as a monarch more inclined toward hasty decisions than the thoughtful diplomacy required of a sovereign leader. A father who struggled to believe in him, Prince Philip's tough love. Criticism of Charles began long before he assumed the throne. In fact, one of his earliest and harshest critics came from within his own family, his father, Prince Philip. The Duke of Edinburgh, known for his resilience, pragmatism, and high expectations, reportedly saw little of those traits in his eldest son. Philip considered young Charles to be too soft, overly sensitive, and spoiled. In Philip's view, the future king lacked both the fortitude and the leadership qualities required to guide a nation as great as Britain. The contrast between the two men, Philip shaped by hardship and Charles often seen as more sheltered, seemed stark, and for Philip, disappointing. Contrasting narratives within the royal household only reinforced these comparisons. Philip's skepticism helped shape public perception of Charles in subsequent years. For many Britons, there was no need to delve into Charles's biographies, the opinion of his own father, a deeply respected figure, seemed to suffice. The monarchy at a crossroads, can Charles III win public trust? King Charles III ascended to the throne at a time when even the institution of the monarchy itself faces growing scrutiny. With public skepticism, dissatisfaction rooted in his past, and a fragile connection to the people, his journey is one fraught with challenges. To succeed, Charles must prove that he is fit to be the symbol of the United Kingdom despite the mistakes, criticism, and weight of his personal history. The question is whether King Charles III can rise above this legacy, leave behind the controversies of his past, and earn his place in history not as a divisive monarch, but as a ruler who ultimately gained the respect and admiration of his people. King Charles III, how a troubled childhood and family dramas shaped the current monarch. As King Charles III, the eldest son of Queen Elizabeth II, not only bears the weight of ruling a nation but also finds himself under the relentless scrutiny of the public. For many Britons, his path to the throne was far from smooth. Instead of the privileges and peaceful upbringing associated with royalty, Charles faced towering family expectations, emotional isolation, and criticism that began in his childhood and persists to this day. So how did Charles's early years become a defining, and often discussed, aspect of his reign? A slow developer, a difficult start for a future monarch. Britain has long idealized the royal family, but Charles's upbringing was far from idyllic. His mother became queen when Charles was just 3 years old. Her sudden accession to the throne turned the family's life upside down, with royal duties leaving little room for affectionate mother-son bonding. According to royal biographers, Queen Elizabeth saw Charles as a child who needed extra time to develop and did not hesitate to voice this belief to those around her. While her attention focused on state affairs, Charles was largely raised by nannies and governesses, depriving him of the emotional warmth many believe is vital for a child's development. As he grew older, Charles openly described his childhood as steeped in formality and emotional detachment. He often referred to his mother and father as emotionally distant. Such an environment exacerbated feelings of loneliness and self-doubt, and his occasional awkwardness and cautious demeanor in public speaking engagements may still be traceable to these early experiences. Prince Philip, a father who raised him like a soldier. A royal upbringing came with strict expectations. A future king should be resilient, decisive, and self-assured. However, according to his father, Prince Philip, Charles did not fit this mold. From a young age, Philip saw his son as too soft, overly emotional, and ill-suited for the harsh realities of life. Philip had been shaped by adversity. His early years were marked by political instability, as his family was exiled from Greece. Later, his time in the British Royal Navy only cemented his reputation for grit and discipline. Unsurprisingly, he sought to instill these qualities in his children. One of Philip's most defining decisions regarding Charles was enrolling him in Gordonstoun, a boarding school in Scotland known for its rigorous and austere approach to discipline. The school emphasized long-distance runs, early morning physical activity, and strict routines. While Philip fondly referred to Gordonstoun as a marvelous school for character building, Charles described his time there as absolute hell. The future king, who had a natural inclination toward art, music, and nature, struggled in an environment that celebrated toughness and endurance, traits that clashed with his sensitive personality. According to royal biographers, Charles endured bullying from his classmates, who mocked his protruding royal ears and teased him for his privileged background. Often feeling isolated and miserable, he emerged from Gordonstoun with emotional scars. His experiences likely contributed to later public perceptions of him as self-conscious and ill at ease, characteristics seen by some as unbefitting of a monarch destined to lead with strength and confidence. Royal loneliness and emotional distance at home. While Charles faced strict discipline with his father, his relationship with his mother appeared even more distant. Though mothers are typically expected to provide warmth and attention, Queen Elizabeth II prioritized royal duties above all else. Historians note that the Queen adhered to the principles instilled by her father, King George VI, a monarch's duty to the nation must come before personal interests. Even with her own children, interactions were often formal and infrequent, more akin to a superior addressing subordinates than a mother engaging with her offspring. She often relied on governesses and even preferred communicating through written notes rather than face-to-face conversation. Raised amidst such emotional restraint, Charles frequently felt adrift, surrounded by the grandeur of empire but lacking a sense of stability or comfort within his own home. As an adult, this emotional void seemingly lingered, leading some experts to suggest that Charles developed a lifelong dependence on the approval and affirmation of those around him. How childhood shaped the reign of King Charles III. For many Britons, Charles's life story reads almost like a modern tragedy. His journey was a battle against his father's expectations, his mother's emotional absence, and his own struggle to find his place in the world. Now, as king, he is seen as a figure of dual public perception. On the one hand, Charles is viewed as a sensitive, thoughtful, and refined leader, qualities reflected in his deep passion for environmental causes, cultural preservation, and spirituality. These traits have the potential to usher in a new era of monarchy, one that champions compassion and forward-thinking values such as sustainability and global responsibility. On the other hand, the lingering effects of his early trauma and the weight of past scandals continue to challenge his image. His perceived temper, family disputes, lack of decisiveness, and strained connection with public expectations feed into the narrative that he remains an incomplete heir, a monarch whose suitability has been doubted even by members of his own family. The question now is whether King Charles III can overcome the burdens of his past, reframe his role as a modern monarch, and ultimately win the respect and trust of his people. King Charles III, a refined monarch or a pampered aristocrat? Upon ascending to the throne as King Charles III, the eldest son of Queen Elizabeth II found himself not only under the vigilant gaze of the media and the public but also burdened by a reputation shaped over decades as a privileged heir. From his life of extraordinary comfort to his famously particular habits, Charles's lifestyle has sparked endless debate. Journalists, biographers, and skeptical subjects alike frequently ask whether he can truly connect with his people when he continues to surround himself with luxury and routines that feel worlds away from the experiences of ordinary Britons. Spoiled from birth? Criticism toward an overprotected heir. From the very start of his life, Charles was placed in a position of unique privilege and attention. As the eldest son of a reigning monarch and the first in line for the throne, he was raised in a cocoon of care and advantages that were supposed to prepare him for his role as the ideal heir. However, for many, the degree of that care and privilege seemed excessive, fostering criticisms of dependency rather than ensuring self-sufficiency. Stories that highlight the level of luxury and meticulous care Charles received as a child, and continues to demand as an adult, frequently emerge in the press and biographies. For example, Charles's wardrobe was reportedly kept in perfect condition by a dedicated team of royal staff, pajamas were ironed daily, socks were pressed, and even his shoelaces were meticulously straightened before storage. It is also said that the temperature of his bath water was obsessively monitored to meet a precise standard. These exacting habits have remained with Charles into adulthood. Those who have worked with him recount that he is easily irritated if routines or expectations are not followed precisely. Among his most extravagant requests, perhaps the most infamous is the ironing of his shoelaces. Additionally, staff members have revealed accounts of him requesting that soap bars be pre-softened for his use. Rather than admiring his fastidiousness, the public has largely reacted with ridicule, viewing these fastidious tendencies as emblematic of a pampered prince. Such behavior seems at odds with the image of a modern-day leader who is meant to inspire his people with modesty and self-reliance. A life of luxury that feels excessive. Adding fuel to the fire are stories about the considerable comforts Charles insists upon, even in his daily life. The new king is surrounded by a large staff ready to attend to his every need, whether at home or during his travels. Many Britons see this as a symbol of disconnect, asserting that the monarchy should not embody such an extreme separation from reality. Charles's lavish preferences during travel have particularly drawn criticism. Reports reveal that he often brings along an extensive array of luggage and even his own furniture. Biographers claim that he regularly travels with his favorite mattress to ensure maximum comfort, even when staying away from his royal residences. Public outrage reached a peak when it was revealed that Charles used the royal train, at great expense to taxpayers, to travel to what was described as a simple visit to a local pub. Equally eyebrow-raising are anecdotes that paint his day-to-day life as completely divorced from regular domestic concerns. For instance, one member of staff reported that Charles was once confused by the sight of kitchen cling film and had no idea what it was used for. Tales like this reinforce the perception of a man far removed from the realities of everyday life, seemingly untouched by the banalities that most people navigate daily. While Charles has championed ecological and frugal living, advocating for sustainability and environmental awareness, this perceived disconnect between his campaigning and his personal lifestyle has sparked frustration among critics. His efforts to promote resource conservation often seem overshadowed by stories of extravagant royal travel and the opulence surrounding his daily life. The distance between monarch and people. Arguably the most frequent complaint against Charles, voiced by both critics and the public, is the existential gap between his luxurious lifestyle and the everyday struggles of the average Briton. Economic challenges, ranging from financial crises to rising living costs and unemployment, create stark contrast with the life of extraordinary privilege enjoyed by the king. British media has often emphasized how even Charles's public appearances, including charitable engagements, are sometimes marked by expenses that feel excessive to the general public. One of the modern monarchy's greatest challenges lies in addressing this divide. Can Charles prove to his subjects that a monarch surrounded by wealth and luxury is still capable of understanding and representing people in today's unequal society? A monarch in transition? Notably, Charles has made efforts to reframe his image, seeking to establish himself as a king who is attuned to the needs of the modern world. His long-standing dedication to sustainable farming, environmental advocacy, and issues related to urban planning and architecture are recognized as key strengths of his public persona. However, an open question remains: can Charles's endeavors for the public good outweigh the criticisms of his privileged personal habits? The king, known for his eccentricities, faces the challenge of demonstrating that he can balance his aristocratic traditions with the practical realities of the 21st century. In the public eye, Charles is often seen as a blend of two extremes, the refined aestheticism of a cultured monarch and the detachment of a pampered aristocrat. His reign will inevitably test his ability to reconcile these competing perceptions. Will he focus on connecting with his people and understanding their needs? Or will the image of the spoiled prince define his legacy? The answer lies in the choices Charles makes as sovereign and, perhaps more importantly, in his ability to adapt to a rapidly changing world. His path forward will determine whether he can fully shake the burdens of his reputation and evolve into the modern monarch his nation needs. King Charles III, an old-fashioned monarch or a leader stuck in the shadow of the past? As King Charles III, inheritor of decades of authority and influence from his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, Charles has found himself at the center of public debates regarding his character, habits, and approach to his role as monarch. From accusations of snobbery and aloofness to contradictions in his environmental advocacy and overlooked charitable contributions, the current king has firmly cemented a divisive position in the history of modern British monarchy. Snobbery, a legacy of royal tradition or personal arrogance? One of the most persistent critiques of Charles, according to both biographers and the media, is his perceived arrogance and preoccupation with high ideals. For many Britons, especially in a time of significant social change, the king seems more focused on his status and personal preferences than on understanding the daily struggles of ordinary people. The stringent and tradition-laden upbringing of a royal heir has undoubtedly shaped his demeanor. Charles appears to genuinely see himself as a guardian of cultural heritage and a protector of traditions. Yet, from the public's perspective, these efforts often come across as elitist. Articles like one published in The New Yorker have openly branded Charles as a snob, highlighting his obsession with idealism and high culture as evidence of a wider disconnect from the general public. In a society where many face economic hardship, a king who embodies a life of refinement and exclusivity struggles to inspire or resonate with his people. The comparison to his eldest son, Prince William, only highlights this generational divide within the monarchy. William has successfully cultivated an image as a relatable and approachable figure, connecting with ordinary citizens in ways that Charles has often struggled to achieve. The British public's admiration for William sharpens the perception that Charles represents outdated ideals, holding steadfast to a more distant, hierarchical model of monarchical authority. To a younger generation of Britons, Charles is increasingly seen as a monarch of yesterday, a symbol of an institution that requires modernization to stay relevant. His formal speeches and reserved mannerisms foster the impression that he remains wedded to leadership models that many believe no longer align with the needs of the 21st century. Clashes over animal rights, tradition at odds with progress. Another long-standing issue that has dogged Charles's reputation is his approach to animal rights and hunting. Despite his vocal support for environmental protection, his defense of traditional practices such as fox hunting has alienated progressive groups and younger citizens. For instance, Charles once described hunting as romantic, sparking widespread backlash. To many, such sentiments feel tone-deaf in an era where compassion toward animals has become a cornerstone of societal ethics. Critics have questioned whether a leader who praises environmental sustainability can convincingly hold that mantle while embracing customs widely regarded as cruel and outdated. This contradiction between tradition and progress has not gone unnoticed and resonates particularly poorly with environmentally conscious Britons. In contrast, his younger son, Prince Harry, publicly abandoned the practice of hunting as a show of solidarity with animal rights advocates. Harry's decision further underscores a narrative of generational shift within the royal family, where Charles appears stuck defending customs that his children, and much of society, have moved beyond. Even within Charles's broader environmental initiatives, these contradictions stand out. While he has been a long-standing advocate for sustainability in combating climate change, such efforts often find themselves overshadowed by his personal associations with practices like hunting, creating an image of a monarch caught between the old and the new. The charitable efforts of King Charles III, overlooked or undervalued? Despite the criticisms, it's impossible to ignore the significant contributions Charles has made throughout his life toward social and environmental causes. His lifetime of philanthropy demonstrates a genuine commitment to making a difference, yet these accomplishments often fail to earn widespread recognition, overshadowed instead by his personal controversies and perceived faults. One of his earliest and most impactful endeavors was the creation of the Prince's Trust, a charity that has provided significant support to disadvantaged youth in the UK. The organization has helped thousands of young people gain education, training, and work opportunities, standing as a tangible legacy of Charles's commitment to social betterment. Additionally, Charles has long been a vocal proponent of sustainable agriculture and the preservation of classical architecture. Years before these issues entered the mainstream, he advocated for small-scale farming practices, organic food systems, and buildings that harmonize with their surrounding environments. Yet, many of these accomplishments have been undermined by media scrutiny or his own public missteps. Instead of focusing on his efforts for social and environmental progress, the public conversation often revolves around his apparent elitism or rigidity. Stories about his personal indulgences, be it his insistence on bringing his own furniture while traveling or his frustration over trivial inconveniences, continue to distract from his charitable work, shaping an image of privilege rather than public service. This imbalance in public perception has led to a distorted view of Charles's impact. While his philanthropic achievements are significant, they often go unacknowledged, as the public fixates on his perceived failings. As a result, Charles is often seen as a monarch tethered to tradition, struggling to assert his relevance in a world increasingly detached from his values. So, who is Charles III, an antiquated monarch or a quiet reformer? The question of whether King Charles III can redefine his role as a modern monarch, one who bridges the storied history of the crown with the changing expectations of contemporary Britain, remains unanswered. On one hand, his dedication to environmentalism, cultural preservation, and philanthropy reflects forward-thinking ideals that could position him as a transformative leader for his time. On the other hand, his perceived snobbery, inflexibility, and attachment to old-fashioned customs continue to alienate him from the public. For a nation grappling with economic disparity and calls for societal reform, Charles's ability to empathize and connect with everyday citizens remains uncertain. Can Charles rise above the contradictions that have long defined his persona? Can he prove himself to be not just the wearer of the crown but a genuine advocate for his people in an era of rapid change? As his reign unfolds, Charles faces the challenge of balancing the grandeur of tradition with the accessibility demanded of a modern-day monarch. Whether he will ultimately succeed in bridging these divides and carving out a legacy as a leader for today's Britain remains a story still in the making. King Charles III, a monarch torn between the contradictions of his past and the demands of the present. After decades of waiting, King Charles III has finally ascended the throne, ushering in a new chapter of the British monarchy. Yet, for many, he remains a divisive figure, a ruler caught between old-fashioned traditions and ambitions to reform and modernize. While Charles has often emphasized his desire to redefine the role of a monarch in modern Britain, his past controversies and complex relationship with the public continue to cast a shadow over his reign. Let's delve into the most significant contradictions shaping his life, legacy, and current challenges as king. Charles and his vision for reforming the monarchy, progress or a threat to stability? From the very beginning of his reign, Charles has hinted at his intention to reform the monarchy to better align with Britain's present-day realities. A key part of this vision involves streamlining the royal family, reducing its size so that only a smaller, core group of senior royals remains visible in public life. Charles argues that this more slimmed-down monarchy will bolster public trust, especially in an era of tightening budgets that demand a more frugal approach to royal expenditures. However, his plans to reconfigure aspects of the monarchy have sparked unease among some members of the British public. Critics worry that these reforms may jeopardize traditions that have endured for centuries. For instance, sidelining certain members of the royal family, who previously held unquestioned status, is seen by some as a move that could destabilize the overall perception of the monarchy. Furthermore, Charles's broader vision has sometimes been criticized for being vaguely defined. His advocacy for a more personal and adaptive role for the monarch leaves many questions unanswered. The British public, accustomed to the steady and predictable leadership of Queen Elizabeth II, may feel uncertain and uneasy about how Charles's proposals might reshape the institution. Can a monarchy so deeply rooted in tradition adapt without losing public confidence? The scandal of Diana and Camilla, a betrayal that lives on. Loyalty is one of the most essential qualities expected of a monarch. Yet in Charles's personal life, this value has been repeatedly questioned. His ill-fated marriage to Princess Diana, which ended in a highly publicized and contentious divorce, remains one of the most painful chapters in the collective memory of Britons. The revelation that Charles maintained a relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles during his marriage to Diana was widely viewed as a betrayal. For many, this admission damaged not only his personal reputation but also the standing of the monarchy itself. While Diana represented warmth, humanity, and a deep connection to the people, Charles came to be seen as distant, detached, and, at times, cold. Even after his marriage to Camilla, the shadow of this scandal has lingered. Many Britons still see the events of the 1980s and 1990s as emblematic of instability and disloyalty, qualities antithetical to the image of a monarch. For a significant portion of the public, this chapter of Charles's life remains deeply ingrained, shaping how they see him as king. A short reign, a transitional figure, or a monarch for the ages? When Charles ascended the throne at the age of 73, he became the oldest heir in British history to take the crown. Many observers believe his reign will be transitional, paving the way for his son, Prince William, who is often seen as the future face of the British monarchy. The long reign of Queen Elizabeth II provided the nation with a profound sense of stability and continuity for over 70 years. In contrast, Charles is unlikely to have a similar lengthy tenure, raising concerns that his rule could be viewed more as a period of experimentation rather than one of lasting influence or achievement. Additionally, many Britons have already expressed their preference for skipping over Charles in favor of William. The younger prince, with his modern sensibilities and close connection to the public, is widely regarded as the ideal figure to refresh the monarchy, bringing it into closer alignment with the values of contemporary society. Camilla, Britain's queen consort, yet still divisive. One of the biggest challenges for Charles's popularity remains the perception of Camilla, his wife and now queen consort. Despite her tireless dedication to charity work and efforts to cultivate a positive image, many Britons still see Camilla as the other woman who played a role in the breakdown of Charles's marriage to Diana. Polls consistently show that a majority of Britons struggle to embrace Camilla in her new role. She is often viewed as unworthy of the title, Queen Consort, with some arguing that no one should wear the late Diana's crown, which symbolizes the public's enduring love and admiration for her. To her credit, Camilla has worked hard to change the narrative around her. She is a patron of over 100 charities, and her diplomatic and understated approach during periods of controversy has helped her win over some portions of the public. However, for many, Camilla remains tied to the scandals of the past, and her image continues to weigh on Charles's ability to fully gain the nation's affection. The crown as a burden more than a blessing. It is hard to think of another heir who spent so long waiting for their moment to ascend to the throne. For Charles, this extended period of expectation and responsibility may have placed unique psychological pressures on him. From an early age, Charles lived under the constant weight of being the heir. He has often spoken of feelings of isolation and frustration, describing himself as a prisoner of the system. His artistic and creative spirit, evident in his passions for gardening, architecture, and classical art, rarely found full expression within the rigid expectations of royal protocol. This tension between personal inclination and royal duty has created a duality in the public perception of Charles. On the one hand, he is viewed as a contemplative and sensitive man. On the other hand, his perceived prioritization of personal interests over his role as a future king raises questions about whether he has the composure and fortitude required for the job. Nevertheless, Charles's commitment to preserving the monarchy and ensuring its adaptation to modern realities is unquestionable. But achieving balance between his empathetic, introspective nature and the harsher demands of kingship may prove to be one of his greatest challenges. King Charles III's reign began amidst the weight of expectations, scrutiny, and controversy. He carries the burden of centuries-old traditions while stepping into an era where the public increasingly expects empathy, transparency, and a focus on contemporary challenges. At the same time, his efforts to modernize the monarchy, such as making it leaner and more aligned with modern values, represent a bold attempt to redefine what it means to be a monarch in the 21st century. However, he faces an uphill battle to overcome public skepticism, his past mistakes, and the entrenched narratives that continue to shape his image. Ultimately, Charles stands at a crucial crossroads. Whether he can bridge the gap between past and present, tradition and reinvention, will determine his legacy as king. Can he emerge as a stabilizing force in uncertain times, or will his reign be overshadowed by the contradictions of his life and the expectations of a nation? Time, and his actions, will provide the answer.